Scarlett, you sure are acting high and mighty for a wife. While the family is waiting for dinner, you're just sitting around and resting? Don't you dare sit down without my permission. The next moment, my face was drenched. Oliver had thrown water at me. The family was chatting in the living room, and I was alone with my husband in our room. He took advantage of the situation to do whatever he pleased. Luckily, it's August, so the water wasn't freezing cold, but the bigger issue was that I was 5 months pregnant. What if something happened to me? This kind of behavior is unforgivable. Anger boiled inside me, but I glanced at the corner of the room and tried to stay calm as I launched my counterattack. So, a wife has to get her husband's permission for everything? Did you get the family's permission, too? Like when you decided to have an affair? Oliver's eyes flashed at the word affair. Seeing his reaction, I gave a defiant smile. It was exactly as I had expected. I had planned to discuss things today. But now I knew he needed to face a living hell. Oliver, I know everything about you, all your foolishness and deceit. And I will make you realize it. As I glared sharply at him, Oliver quickly adopted a defiant attitude and began to argue back. An affair? Scarlett, what are you talking about? You're delusional. Don't go telling the family weird things. It's embarrassing. Instead of sitting around, why don't you do more housework? Honestly, for a wife. Oliver continued to dismiss me with a mocking attitude. I was utterly disgusted and exasperated by his words. As he was about to return to the living room where the family was, Sebastian, Oliver's older brother, walked in and blocked his path. Oliver, what have you been doing? Nothing, bro. Why are you here anyway? This is my wife's room. Oliver hesitantly opened his mouth but soon fell silent. Sebastian's face was filled with anger, and it was terrifying. Oliver's face turned pale for a moment, showing a hint of fear, but he quickly tried to regain his composure and headed towards the living room. However, Sebastian didn't let him pass. Oliver, did you throw water on her? Is that true? My wife just spilled water on herself. It's no big deal. Stop making a fuss over nothing. Oliver gave me a silent warning not to say anything unnecessary. Usually, I would be too scared to speak up, but today was different. I had made up my mind. For the sake of the baby in my belly, I would never yield to him. Oliver seemed to notice the change in my demeanor, but it was already too late. I calmly pointed to the corner of the room and said, "There's a hidden camera over there. I've recorded everything you've done to me." As soon as he heard those words, Oliver's face turned pale. His previously strong attitude crumbled, and he began to tremble with fear. "No, a hidden camera." A voice weaker than I had ever heard before. Oliver probably thought I couldn't do anything. Seeing him like that, I almost laughed inwardly at how foolish he was. It's true that Oliver splashed water on her, isn't it? Well, I knew from the beginning it was your doing. But Oliver, do you realize what you're doing? Scarlett is pregnant. What if something happened to the baby? How would you take responsibility? Sebastian's face grew even more severe. Oliver tried to say something but could only look down under the weight of Sebastian's presence. You go silent when things get tough. Coward. Looks like you need to be taught a harsh lesson. Sebastian then grabbed Oliver's clothes and dragged him into the living room. Oliver resisted, but Sebastian didn't budge. Hey, bro, what are you doing? Stop it. You'll scare the relatives. What are you talking about? This is all your fault. Besides, the relatives are about to get a real shock. We all know what you've been up to. Oliver's face looked like he wanted to say it was all over, but this was just the beginning. I was determined to drag him into hell. I steeled myself and headed to the living room. When we arrived, the relatives were chatting but fell silent as soon as we entered. It was no wonder. I was drenched, and Oliver was being dragged by Sebastian. It was clearly not a normal situation. All eyes were on us, filled with curiosity and suspicion. Ignoring them, I headed straight for a particular woman and forcefully made her stand. Oliver's wife can't sit without permission, right? Since you're also Oliver's wife, you need to stand, Emma. Emma is Sebastian's wife. My statement that Emma was Oliver's wife sent a shockwave through the living room. The relatives began to murmur, clearly taken aback by my words. Of course, Emma herself looked shocked. I continued calmly. I know everything about Emma being Oliver's mistress. I'm gonna tell all the relatives about your affair. The room erupted into chaos, the tension skyrocketing. Yet Sebastian and I remained calm. We had already uncovered that Oliver's mistress was indeed Emma. Oliver, Emma, you must be ready for this. There's no hiding it anymore. The murmurs of the relatives grew louder, the moment of truth approaching. Oliver's face showed his anxiety over this unexpected turn of events. He desperately tried to resist, not willing to admit it. What? I have no idea what you're talking about. I would never cheat. The relatives were stunned into silence, their shock highlighting the gravity of the situation. Scarlett, are you okay? Here, use this to dry off. We can't have you catching a cold. My mother-in-law said, handing me a towel. Her kindness was a small comfort. Oliver, what does she mean by affair? And why is Scarlett drenched? You didn't do this, did you? No, of course not. Scarlett spilled the water herself. I would never splash water on a pregnant woman. I felt anger welling up inside at my husband's excuses, but I maintained a calm facade. Meanwhile, Sebastian seemed to sense my inner turmoil and directed a sharp gaze and words at Oliver. Oliver, stop lying. I know not only about the affair but also about how you've been mistreating your wife. That's why I was worried and came to check on things today. I could hear you shouting and the sound of water splashing from outside Scarlett's room. Sebastian coming to my room wasn't a coincidence. I had been confiding in him for some time. I'm sorry, Scarlett. I didn't expect Oliver to go as far as splashing water on you. I couldn't stop him. Sebastian apologized, but I shook mine slightly. I hadn't expected to be splashed with water either. Seeing our exchange, the confusion among my in-laws and the other relatives grew, but they were starting to grasp the situation. Scarlett, I'm so sorry. If what Sebastian says is true, Oliver has done something unforgivable. I shook my head again. My mother-in-law had no need to apologize. The one who should apologize was my husband. Oliver, tell the truth. About the affair and the mistreatment, what's really going on? An affair and mistreatment? I didn't do any of that. It's all Scarlett's imagination. Imagination? Did you forget? I told you earlier, I set up a hidden camera in my room. So, all your mistreatment is recorded. It's pointless to keep making excuses, just admit it. As I spoke, I played the footage from the hidden camera stored on my phone. It showed Oliver verbally abusing me and occasionally raising his hand. The room fell silent, frozen by the undeniable evidence. He could call it imagination, but the footage showed the undeniable truth. He could no longer deny it. Oliver always looked down on me as just his wife. There should be no hierarchy in marriage. I had always tried to stand by his side. But he never cared about me or our unborn child. Unable to forgive him, I glared at Oliver, and my in-laws and the other relatives joined in with cold stares. They now seemed convinced that Oliver was lying, making the atmosphere in the living room even heavier. In the midst of the silence, my in-laws spoke up. Oliver, why did you do this? Scarlett is pregnant, what were you thinking? Do you realize how awful your actions are? Stop lying and tell the truth. Their angry voices cut through the silence, their rage palpable. I had never seen my in-laws this angry, and it made me falter a bit, but then I understood. They were angry for the sake of me and my unborn baby. Their kindness almost brought me to tears. Meanwhile, Oliver looked down as if deep in thought. After a few seconds, he spoke heavily. My job isn't going well. My boss has been harassing me every day. I was mentally cornered and took it out on Scarlett. But that doesn't justify splashing water on your pregnant wife. I'm sorry, Scarlett. I really am. But I didn't have an affair. Right, Emma? That's right, we haven't done anything. Stop making baseless accusations. Emma spat out, clearly annoyed. Oliver might have admitted to mistreating me, but he was determined to deny the affair. It was pointless, though. I've said it before, and I'll say it again, I know everything. All that's left for them is to confess, apologize, and take responsibility. I glanced at Oliver and Emma with a mix of anger and pity before turning to Sebastian. He met my eyes and nodded quietly, preparing to reveal the truth. Oliver, Emma, can you still say the same after seeing this? Sebastian pulled a file from his bag and spread its contents in front of the relatives. I began explaining each item to the puzzled relatives. Here are receipts and photos Sebastian found in Emma's room. Receipts from fancy restaurants and love hotels, and screenshots of emails showing their affair. The relatives gasped in shock, and my in-laws' faces turned red with anger. My heart was pounding, but I felt a sense of vindication. Oliver, you said you weren't having an affair, right? It's all lies. How long do you plan to deceive us? This is absurd. I haven't done anything wrong. Stop it, Oliver. Scarlett and I have thoroughly investigated you both. We have all the evidence. We even hired a private investigator. Oliver and Emma's faces paled, and they began to tremble. I felt satisfied with their reaction, but maintained a calm demeanor. Do you really think you can get away with treating Scarlett like this when she's pregnant? The relatives stared coldly at Oliver and Emma. Unbelievable. This is outrageous. They muttered, struggling to grasp the reality of the situation. Oliver, there's no more room for excuses. We're exposing everything about you and Emma. You better be ready. You're not getting away with this. My in-laws and the relatives shouted angrily, berating Oliver and Emma. Watching the scene, I felt a slight sense of relief. Oliver and Emma had no choice but to accept their situation. They were at a loss for words, finding themselves in a situation where they had no choice but to apologize. But then, to my dismay, Oliver brazenly retorted. Stop making such a big deal out of this. I haven't done anything wrong. Besides, it's your fault for being fooled. And you're all making a fuss over a mere affair. You're all so annoying. Oliver's words only deepened the relatives' disappointment. I felt anger and frustration rising at his insensitivity. Ignoring us, Oliver glared at Sebastian and began to reveal something outrageous. I've looked down on you ever since we were students, Sebastian. I was always way more capable. I got a job at a prestigious company while you settled for a mediocre one. You said it was to follow your dreams. Well, that suits a nobody like you. At that moment, my heart turned cold as ice. I looked at him with shock and disbelief. Why are you so obsessed? Why can't you forgive Sebastian for choosing his own path? It doesn't matter. I didn't care what path my brother chose. What I couldn't stand was everyone else. Every time someone opened their mouth, it was always about my brother. Even our parents and relatives. I don't understand why they praised a nobody like him. Oliver declared, but to me, his pride was laughable. He continued, now looking at Emma. And then, my brother married someone as wonderful as Emma, someone everyone envies. He gained even more trust from our family and relatives. That really pissed me off. So, out of jealousy, I had an affair with Emma. I didn't marry you out of love, Scarlett. I did it for appearances, to compete with my brother. Oliver showed no remorse as he spoke. And his words shattered my heart. So, you never saw me as anything but a tool. Did you have a child for the same reason? Exactly. It would have looked bad if I didn't have at least one kid. Plus, Sebastian and Emma didn't have any kids. To surpass my brother, I needed a child. He smirked coldly. At that moment, all the love I had for him vanished. Married for appearances? Had a child to outdo his brother? I couldn't understand it, I didn't want to understand it. There are people who long for a child but can't have one. Treating life so lightly is unforgivable. My husband was far worse than I ever imagined. Did you mistreat me to drive me away so you could marry Emma? Is that it? Exactly. The story about my boss harassing me was all a lie. I thought I could fool you easily. You're pretty sharp, Scarlett. But even though you found out, it doesn't change my plans. I'm gonna leave you and start a new life. Oliver answered coldly, a sneer on his face. At that moment, Oliver was forcefully knocked to the floor. My father-in-law had pushed him down and was now straddling him, his face full of rage. My mother-in-law, standing nearby, was in tears.
Oliver, everything you're saying is wrong. What do you mean, for appearances? What do you mean, looking bad? Don't hurt the people who matter for such stupid reasons.
My father-in-law shouted, his fists clenched in anger. His words gave me a slight sense of relief. But Oliver quickly retorted.
My brother and Scarlett don't matter to me. And whose fault do you think this is? It's because you, my family, never properly appreciated me. I'm not the bad one, it's your fault for being fooled.
Oliver glared fiercely at his father, but my father-in-law didn't back down. He could never forgive his selfish son. But my mother-in-law intervened, stopping him before he could beat Oliver any further.
Oliver, you're truly disgraceful. A grown man only thinking of himself. Sebastian is respected because he's always sincere with everyone. People love him because he never forgets to show gratitude. Don't you get that?
I don't get it. He probably just manipulated everyone behind the scenes. But I don't care anymore. All that matters is that I can marry Emma. So, all of you are useless to me now. He looked down at my in-laws with cold eyes. His words reignited my anger. This man needed to understand. With that feeling in mind, I gave my husband one final warning.
You'll regret this one day.
Not a chance. You'll be the one regretting divorcing me. Come on, Emma, let's go. We're done with this family. Spewing more hateful words, Oliver grabbed Emma and stormed out of the house. Some relatives tried to follow them, but Oliver and Emma were too quick to catch. The living room was left in a heavy silence. My mother-in-law sat down on the spot, and my father-in-law sighed deeply. It seems we made mistakes in how we raised him. I'm truly sorry for not noticing your suffering, Scarlett. Scarlett, we're really sorry. We'll take responsibility for Oliver. My in-laws apologized sincerely. Please stop. You two did nothing wrong. The one at fault is Oliver, and maybe me for not speaking up. But you don't need to do anything. He's already in his own hell. When I answered with a smile, my in-laws looked puzzled. When I explained the situation, their eyes widened in surprise. I had already taken measures. I knew everything. At that moment, I was certain I would no longer be swayed by his actions. A month later, I waited in my in-laws' living room. Present were me, Sebastian, and my in-laws. The atmosphere was heavy, filled with a tense anticipation. Then, my husband hurried in. A look of panic on his face. I kept my composure as I watched him. Though I had anticipated this, I asked him anyway. What's wrong? Why are you in such a hurry?
Emma has disappeared.
His voice trembled. His eyes filled with fear and anxiety.
I gave her the money for our wedding, but the next day, she was gone.
So, you came here to ask Sebastian if he knows where Emma is?
Yes, I thought he might know something.
Desperately, he turned his gaze to Sebastian. At that moment, everyone but my husband sighed deeply. He looked confused, not understanding why.
Sebastian spoke up on behalf of everyone.
Emma is with the police.
He answered calmly but firmly. I could see the color drain from my husband's face. I felt a sense of satisfaction knowing he was finally facing the truth.
Actually, after hiring a private investigator, Sebastian and I discovered that Emma had been scamming multiple men out of their money.
I quietly revealed the truth, knowing it was a harsh reality he needed to hear. I continued.
Emma was obsessed with one guy and needed money for him. Obsessed with one guy? That can't be. We contacted the men she had scammed and exposed her true nature. They all filed reports, and Emma was taken in by the police.
Sebastian stated the facts plainly. My husband stared at the ground, unable to say a word.
Oliver, your thinking is completely wrong. You need to apologize to Scarlett and take responsibility. How foolish, not realizing the pain until you yourself are deceived. Oliver, you can look down on me all you want. But I will never forgive you for deceiving Scarlett, our parents, and our family. As I've said before, you will take responsibility. Be prepared.
Finally, Oliver collapsed to his knees. He had talked about starting a new life with Emma, but nothing had even begun. It's no surprise, really. He brought all of this upon himself.
I will be filing for divorce and seeking child support. No matter how much you regret and reflect on your actions, I cannot forgive you for neglecting our unborn child. Some things in life are beyond repair.
I delivered my final words coldly. Inside, I felt this was our ending and my new beginning. After that, our divorce was finalized. Oliver's affair became gossip at his workplace, and he was shunned by his colleagues. Despite that, he had to continue working to pay child support and alimony, living a life of shame. Meanwhile, Emma was sued by the men she deceived and fell into ruin due to debts she had hidden from Sebastian. She regretted her actions, apologized to Sebastian, and asked for help, but he coldly handed her divorce papers. A few days later, I met with Sebastian to express my gratitude once again. Despite feeling a swirl of complex emotions, I was deeply thankful for his calmness and judgment.
Sebastian, I really appreciate all you've done for me in this situation. Not at all, Scarlett. I'm the one who should apologize.
Sebastian said so. I reaffirmed his sincerity.
Even so, you've saved me. Can I continue to rely on you if I ever need help?
Touched by his kindness, I felt grateful from the bottom of my heart. At the same time, I couldn't help but think that if I had faced my husband sooner, things might have turned out differently.
Of course. I'll always be here to help.
Sebastian's gentle smile made me understand why he was trusted by our parents and relatives. As we exchanged smiles, the tension melted away.
For now, I'm done with marriage. Yeah, but you never know what life will bring.
I joked, and Sebastian responded with a smile. Without him, I wouldn't have been able to do anything. Perhaps because I had suffered so much emotional damage from my husband, Sebastian's smile made my heart race and feel warm. I prayed that this new beginning would be a happy one for us, and for now, all I could do was move forward. Years later, I would end up marrying Sebastian. But that's another story.